Today I get to continue our series. We've been in a series called Defining Moments. Anybody been impacted by this series so far? I got to be real honest with you. I did not expect this series to impact people the way that it did. As we talk about these different definitions that we've taken on ourselves or different things we believe that were not quite true. And sometimes that happens because of life experience, or it happens because you've just believed some things about yourself that either someone spoke over you or you just simply made up the definition on your own of what that thing means. And so we have these moments in our lives, defining moments, where God takes that truth that is not true, it's a lie, that's what it's called, that untruth, the lie that we believe, and he confronts it with his truth. And he brings in the reality of what it should be real in our lives. And we have in that moment the opportunity not just to understand it here, but if we make the choice to believe it here in our believer, right? That our believer grabs a hold of that and we get it, then we get the benefit of that new definition in our lives. These are the defining moments. And I've sat with many of you guys, heard your testimonies of times that God has shown you something and in a moment your life was changed. And so we've been going through this series, and as I came into today, and I thought, what could we talk about today? That I actually went back to a message I preached about 4 years ago. And so today what we're going to talk about is the freedom of authenticity. The freedom of authenticity. That authenticity will trump appearance any day. And the reason I went back to this, for one, I taught this probably about 4.5 years ago, and most of you were not here 4.5. Who was here during COVID? Yeah, so most of you were not here during this time. So this is a new message for you. Congratulations. The rest of you, my hope is you've grown in this, you've developed this in your life. But authenticity, guys, is a core value at this church. It is a core value. It is part of who we are. And what I want to share today is not a knock against any other church. I'm not here to preach against how any other church is. I'm just here to say the truth that we found here in this place. And so what you'll find is that this authenticity that God has for us, this way that he wants us to live, is not so that he can point out all the negative parts in our lives. It's so that we can live freely and enjoy the life that he has for us. There is such a freedom in living authentically. And I don't know about you, but in high school, I really struggled with authenticity. I tried to fit in with so many different groups. For a season, I tried to fit in with the group, the guys that had the nicer clothes, and I had my purple Jabot jeans. Anybody remember Jabot jeans? They weren't just purple, they were purple corduroy Jabot jeans. These things were awesome. And they came up to about right here. You wore them around your waist, right? No, lower than your waist, and you bought about 6 sizes too big. And then you had the big long shirt that came with it. And everybody was grateful because your pants weren't pulled all the way up. And I tried to fit in with that group. And then I started dating a girl. And this girl was from the country. And so I decided to be what's called a kicker. Anybody remember kickers? And you were called a kicker because you had no idea what it meant to be country. You just dressed in the hat and the boots, right? And you had the real tight jeans. You guys thought tight jeans were a new thing. Oh no, our generation. We had the tighter jeans, right? And so you had the tight jeans, but you were called a kicker because all you knew how to do in the country was go out and kick the cow pies that were out in the pasture. That's the only thing you could do because you didn't know who you were. You were just a kicker. And so I lived as a kicker there for about a year of my life, man. George Strait, and all the good old classic country music. I was into all of that. And then that relationship ended, and you know what? I was no longer a kicker anymore. Why? Because it wasn't authentically who I was. And then I got to college, and honestly, when I got to college, I realized, man, I tried to fit in with all these friends, and those friends aren't around anymore. I tried to date this girl, and that girl's not around anymore. And I honestly am happy because I don't even know who I am anymore. And so that first semester of college was me really trying to find out authentically who I was. And I found out some different things. I found out that I don't really like cowboy boots. I just don't. You know what else I found out? This is going to shock you. I like black shirts. I know that's a shock to many of you guys. Someone told me one time, I just picture your closet as just a sea of black shirts, and they're mostly correct. Why? Because I like black shirts. Why would I wear anything else? Because Dana tells me. But other than that, I wear black shirts. I found out I like trucks. I found out I like salads. Please don't tell the guys when they get back in town. But I was on this drive to really find out who I was. And in that drive to find out who I was, there was this inner desire to live in authenticity, to live in a way that was just open and I could just be myself. And then I went to Christian college, and what we found in Christian college, I got together with a group of friends that just kind of loved living life. They just loved God, and they kind of figured out who they were a little bit, and they just loved being together. And what we found in college, now I'm not knocking Christian college, but this is what we found in our college, you find this everywhere, is there were people that would go party on a Saturday night, and they would sleep in on a Sunday morning, not go to church. But before they went to lunch in the Christian cafeteria, they'd go get dressed up in their Sunday best. Why? Because they wanted everybody to think they went to church that morning. And we found this hilarious. And so what we decided to do, because we did get up in the morning and go to church because we loved God and we knew that was going to set us on the right path in our life, we would go to church and we'd go back and put on our pajamas and then go to the cafeteria. Because we wanted everyone to talk bad about us, even though they were the ones who didn't go to church. Guys, we had this drive for authenticity, and it kind of pushed us to develop a hunger for people that were genuine. People that weren't polished or performative, people that were just honest, real people. And I praise God, I found that kind of group in college. Now, we used to joke around that we were going to make t-shirts that just said real. Because we were going to be real in we didn't even know what that meant, Mike, but we were going to do it. We were going to be real in our lives. And I found that group, and I was so grateful for it. And then I met Dana, and she had her group of friends. She kind of grew up with the preppy group, and she visited my friends one day. She hung out with us one day, and she said, Brandon, I got to tell you something. Your friends are weird, but they love each other. And I'm not used to that. My friends don't really like each other. And I thought, man, this is reality. That we have to live in a way, guys, that we're authentic. And what we found in college is that God values honesty over hype. He'd rather you be real than to look right. He wants you to be authentically you where you are right now. He's not looking for plastic. He's not looking for you to look like anything. He wants you to be you in the place you are right now. And as we moved from college to DFW, this desire to find people that were that way just grew and grew and grew. And I'd love to tell you that we found that at Grace. We found people that genuinely celebrated when something good happened in your life. They were happy for you, not jealous of what you had. They were just happy for you that you got what God was doing in your life. People that would cry with you whenever you're having a rough season, that they wouldn't look down on you or belittle you or lecture you. They would sit right beside you as Job's friends did, but not do what Job's friends did and just shut their mouths for a season and just love you in the place that you're in. We found that here at Grace. We found a place where it was okay not to be okay some days. You guys know what I'm talking about? That you could walk in and genuinely have a rough week and say, hey, listen, how's your week? It's been rough this week. I'm struggling this week. I'm having a hard time this week. We found that at Grace before Grace was Grace. Because we found it in some people. Found it in people like Mike and Sharon. People that have genuinely been themselves ever since I've known them. People like Bob and Mary Ann, Pete and Jackie, Pastor Jim, who was one of our founding pastors, and Katie. People that taught us, listen guys, you could have a genuine relationship with others when you're genuinely yourself. And so we learned that from them, and we found, guys, that this was just a unique place. And again, I'm not knocking other churches, but I forget how unique that is in the church culture. And I was sitting here a couple weeks ago, right where you guys are sitting talking to someone, and they were just going, wow, I'm just blown away at what's going on here. And it was this realization, I forgot that this isn't normal for people. That it's not normal to walk into church and just be you. And people look at you and go, man, I'm so glad you're here. Man, you know what? I know your name. I know who you are. Renee, I know who you are, and I'm glad that you're Renee. I'm so thrilled that you are who God created you to be, and you get to be that every single day of your life. That's such a thrill for us that you get to be that. Guys, that's not normal in the Christian culture, and I think it comes from some different places. I think some of it just comes because the Christian culture creates that this need, well, I got to look a certain way to fit in. I got to put on all the Christian verbs, all the Christian terms. I got to look the right way. I got to put on my Christian Jabot jeans, right? Like I got to fit in with everybody else. And I think some of it comes too because people don't really want to drop the walls. That's a pretty painful place to be. I mean, what's going to happen if they really know who I am? What's going to happen if they really find out who I am? But you need to know that God, what he desires from you is fruit, not a facade. And fruit is produced in your life, not pretended in your life. It comes out of what God is doing inside of you, and that only happens if you're truly authentic with who you are. And so what is authenticity? Well, kind of the best definition I can give you, the most straightforward, it's that the inner you matches the outer you. There's this transparency. There's no filter that it filters through so that others see something different. That you legitimately have no sort of mismatch between what's on the outside and what's on the inside. And when you live that way, there are incredible benefits of authenticity. And one of the incredible benefits is that when you don't live authentically, it drains your energy and it steals your inner peace. That it begins to rob from you. Begins to steal your energy that's literally inside of you. You begin to get worn out because you're duplicate lives. There was a study done in 2017, and what had happened is they went through the school and they began to talk with these different students, these different teens about authenticity in their lives. And they had them take a survey, and those who measured authentically in their lives, they said, yeah, I'm the same person at home that I am out in public, that I don't really hide things in my life. Everybody knows my stuff. My business is out. My parents know who I am. They kind of rated them higher in authenticity. That those said, well, I've got some different friends, and I'm a little bit, I act a little different when I'm around different friends in different ways, or I live one way behind closed doors than what my parents know about me, that they rated them lower in their authenticity. And then Hurricane Harvey came. And they thought, well, that study is just kind of blown. We don't know what to do with it. And then about 9 weeks later, they said, you know what, actually, that study may be worthwhile. And so they went back into those same schools and studied these kids who lost their homes in the flood, who lost friends with what was going on. And they began to study their stress levels. And what they found is those who rated high in authenticity had much lower stress levels in Harvey. That they had a resilience in their lives. Why? Because they weren't burning off all this cognitive energy, this cognitive part of themselves to try to pretend to be one thing here and one thing there. They just simply said, yeah, we're in a mess. Let's figure out how to fix it. When you live not authentically, this is a very hard word to say over and over. When you live that way, it's like having all these different apps running in the background while you've got an app running out front. And you're burning off all this stuff in the back, trying to make it all work. But those who are authentic said, listen, what you see is what you get. This is who I am. It's who I am. And you know what? Honestly, I'm okay with where I am right now. And those who face the storms of life, if they live authentically, what they get is they find God's peace and God's strength so much quicker. Why? Because they just go, hey, God, here I am. I'm a mess right now. I don't have to pretend that everything is okay. I'm struggling right now. Or you know what? I'm actually okay right now. And I'm good saying that because I genuinely am okay. Guys, we need to have this desire for authenticity. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect in this. This is something that I grow in and I develop and I work on in my life. So many of you guys are in that same place where it's like, you know what? I'm tired of the walls. I'm kind of tired of not being known by people. I'm tired of going to church on Sunday and then going back home after that and realizing I didn't really connect. I may have said hi to a bunch of people, but I didn't really connect with anybody while I was there. Why? Because I just had the front on the whole time. Instead of just finding people that allow me just to drop the facade and be me. And this desire for authenticity, although it was kind of birthed in our hearts in college, let me tell you, it was birthed a long time before that in the heart of God. And we'll see this in John chapter 1. John chapter 1, verse 43 through 48, through a young man named Nathaniel. And here's what it says. It says the next day, now what happened in the previous day? That's kind of important to this story. The previous day, Jesus was going around. He began to pick out his disciples. And he picked out Peter and he picked out Andrew. You see, he found Andrew and began to speak to Andrew and said, come follow me. And Andrew said, whoa, hold on. Let me go get my brother. And so he ran home and he got his brother Peter and he brought Peter. He said, okay, Peter, why don't you come follow me? So you have Peter and Andrew, the first two disciples that were called to follow Jesus, were brothers. And it says the next day Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, follow me. Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. You see, Andrew and Peter were brothers, and they were from Bethsaida, and Philip was from Bethsaida. These were hometown cronies, guys. They knew each other. They knew each other. They were from the same place, from the same village, from the same town. They probably shopped at the same Quickie Mart all the time, guys. Probably bumped into each other at Target. Hey, are you getting the hummus? I'm getting the hummus for the party today. Let's get together and have some, you get the falafel and we'll enjoy this, right? They grew up probably with Miss Miriam as their Sunday school teacher. Then they went to the same temple, had their bar mitzvah in the same temple. It would have been easy for these three to get along. Why? Because they already knew each other. Probably had the same language, the same inside jokes, the same terminologies because they were from the same town. But then it continues in verse 45. It says, Philip found Nathanael. Now, you got to love this about Philip. Philip's an evangelist. He pulls people in, but he grabs Nathanael and talks to him and begins to tell him about Christ. But the difference in Nathanael is Nathanael was an outsider. We find in John chapter 21 that Nathanael was not from Bethsaida. Nathanael was from Cana, a town about 5 miles away. He wasn't part of the same hometown. He didn't grow up with these guys. He's the first outsider brought into this group with Jesus. And Philip found Nathanael and told him, we have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Now, can you imagine? Put yourself in Nathanael's shoes. Some of you guys can probably relate to Nathanael. Anybody feel like an outsider sometimes coming into church? You feel like an outsider, maybe even coming into Grace. You're like, I don't even know. These people are weird. I'm not so sure. They all have the same terminology. They all joke about the same things. But yet I feel like I'm on the outside. You probably can relate to Nathanael. And so they say, look, here's Jesus. And here's Nathanael's response. I love it. He says, here's Jesus of Nazareth, the one whom the prophets wrote about. And Nathanael says, Nazareth? Can anything good come from there? I like this guy. Man, he is a straight shooter. This guy, you know what he's thinking. There is a short distance between what he's thinking and what his tongue says. He's honest. You don't have to guess about where he is. He goes, Nazareth? Man, is there anything good from there? That's like us going, Euless. Is there anything good from Euless? Austin, man, is there anything good from Austin? New York City, get a rope, man. Los Angeles, Portland, Utah. Is there anything good come from Utah? Well, yeah, the Son of God came from Nazareth, right? So, and I like this guy. And Philip just says, well, come and see. And when Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. He said, this guy is authentic. He's got authenticity. He says who he says he is. He does it. He lives it out. It sounds like Jesus appreciates his authenticity. How do you know me? Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you. He said, I saw you. Nathanael, I saw you. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. He's the God who sees. That's right. He says, I saw you. And you guys need to know, before you showed up this morning, Jesus saw you. When you were there debating on whether you were going to make the first service and decided to go to the second service, he saw you. Last night when you said, you know what, I don't know if I want to wake up for church tomorrow morning, he saw you in that place. This week when you were fighting with your spouse and you said, you know what, I don't know if I want to go through this anymore, he saw you in that place. This week when you said, you know what, I'm really struggling to believe that God exists. I don't even know that he is who he says he is. He still saw you, but yet he called you into his family. When you're hiding under the fig tree of life, pondering who you are, pondering who God is, he still sees you. He sees your curiosity, he sees your doubt, your uncertainty, and your skepticism. And he's always waiting to bring you into the family. See, authenticity begins with knowing that you're already known. I can be true with you because I already have somebody I'm true with. I'm okay with you knowing who I am because I've got a Father who knows exactly where I am and loves me still. Psalms 139, 1 and 2 says, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise, you perceive my thoughts from afar. And you may feel unseen and overlooked or passed by, but before you stepped into this room, Jesus saw you. And he did not see the Instagram you, and he did not see the church you, and he did not see the work you. He saw you. The honest you who's under the fig tree. And as we learn about Nathanael's story, one of the things we have to ask is, okay, we saw him, what happened to Nathanael? Well, we don't hear a lot about Nathanael. He's not one of the big three. We don't hear a lot of things about him. But if you fast forward to John chapter 21, Jesus has died. The disciples have gone back to fishing. And it lists off several guys who were there. Peter and Andrew and Nathanael. He's become part of the crowd. He's found his place. He went from being on the outside to being on the inside. And what was his ticket in? Was authenticity. That he was known by them. Authenticity is the path from outsider to insider in God's family. Come on, you become part of the family when you accept Jesus Christ, but you get knitted into the family when you're honest about where you're at. When you're willing to drop the walls and just be who you are. And that's one of the things, listen, I love about this church. I'm gonna brag on Grace today. And you know what? We're not perfect, but we're authentic about that. Because this church values authenticity. Let me read you some testimonies. So different testimonies are things that people have either said to us, written to us, we found them online, and I think it speaks to the value of honesty in this place. People have cared about me when I walked in the door. Anybody have that experience walking into this door? That you didn't just meet a greeting team that said, hello, go in, hello, go in, hello, go in. They stopped and went, hey, Jenny, glad you're here. Man, it was good to meet you last week. I'm so glad. Man, how are things going? Why? Because they care about you. The authentic you. Another testimony says, your church really believes what you teach. I sure hope so. And you expect God to answer your prayers. You are dang right we do expect that, what God has for us. Why? Because we're going to teach what is true and live authentically out of that place. Another said, I've been praying for a place to belong for years, for true friends and people here accepted me for who I am. Guys, that's what it looks like to be in a place where there are authentic relationships. Another person said, I can't believe how open and honest people are in life groups. Yeah, you want to see some authenticity, jump in a life group. We had Irene Cedillo. I don't think Irene's here this morning. I think she's coming to third. Irene, when she first came to grace, first became a believer, she was in our life group. And I share this, I've shared it before, I've asked her permission, and I'm sure she's fine with it now. So, but Irene would come to our life group, brand new believer, was not raised in any of this. And she showed up one week at life group. And before she just walked in the door, and the first words out of her mouth were, "I don't know that I believed anything that was spoken on Sunday." And we thought, oh man, this is gonna be a fun discussion tonight. We're like, okay, well, come on in, come share with us. She sat down over the meal. We get to discussion. We're like, hey, Irene, can you just share with us what's going on in you? And we really want to hear. She said, well, I just disagree with this, and I disagree with this, and I disagree with this, and I know God's word says this, and I understand this. And actually, you know what? I actually believe everything that was spoken on Sunday night. Why? Because being authentic allowed her to find out where she really was, but yet comparing it to God's truth allowed her to find out what was real. Guys, we value authenticity. Here, one more review here, one more thing. And this one actually makes me laugh because I came out of a church that was not this way. It says, you guys really like each other here. I'm not used to that in church. Oh, and if you grew up in that kind of church, you know exactly what they're talking about. And guys, what ties these all together is transparency and genuineness and authenticity, guys. It's a way that we must live our lives. It's a core value to who we are. And so what I want to talk about the rest of our time is, what does it mean to live in authenticity? What are the ingredients we need to have to live this way? And believe it or not, I only have 2 points today. Yeah, praise God, right? We got 2 points today, and our first point is this: for us to live in authenticity, we must have personal sincerity. We must have personal sincerity. We must personally be sincere in how we live our lives. Ephesians 4:25 says, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. You see, what's happening here in Ephesians is Paul's writing to this church and saying, listen, guys, this is how the church must live. And for the church to truly become in unity, and for the church to become who they were supposed to be, one of the things that is important is that each of you put off falsehood. And that's more than just lying to each other. It's about lying about who you are to each other. You put off falsehood. That it's okay for you to walk in on a Sunday morning, and when everybody is marching around talking about the promises of God, and I want the promises of God, I'm going to declare the promises of God, that you walk in and you go, you know what? I don't really feel like I'm in that place right now. I'm actually kind of frustrated right now. Or I don't like how my life is going right now. Or I'm dealing with this problem right now. I can't march around the room with you guys. You have fun, but this is where I'm at. But you don't stay in that place. You confess where you're at. You share it. You go, you know what, Sarah, I need to talk. I need to share with you. This is what's going on with me. And Sarah will sit there and listen and listen and listen and love you and encourage you. But at some point, she's going to say, yes, but what does God's word say? Because if I confront myself with God's word, let's rewind to last week's message, then I begin to reflect the character of God, reflect the things of God, and then I begin to go, you know what? I don't like my life, but I'm pretty grateful for who God is, and I can drop that baggage on the ground, and I can start enjoying what God's doing in my life. It means you come in on a Wednesday night to life group, and you don't just sit there and they go, hey, anybody have anything? No, that message didn't really pertain to me. No, what about you? I mean, sitting there knowing what's going on in your life. You know, hey, do you have anything to share? No, I'm good. And sometimes I want to go, you're lying. That doesn't help. I've tried it before. But if you can share it and go, hey, here's where I'm at. I just want to be honest about where I am. Then you move down the process of being able to deal with that thing in your life. See, authenticity starts by dropping the walls and revealing where you are. Not who you are. That is not who you are, but that is exactly where you are. It's like those maps in the malls, right? What's the first thing you have to find in that map in the mall? You got to find out where you are to find out how you're going to get to the place you want to go. And so you got to be honest about where you are, but this is counter to what our culture teaches us to do. We are taught to have heroes that are athletes. You don't know a dang thing about that person. Oh yeah, I do. I know everything about Michael Jordan, greatest basketball player that ever lived. LeBron James, not even close. Michael Jordan, man, he's the man. I know all his stats, I know all these things. Listen, you know him 1 hour at a time. That's all you know. You don't know the real him. Our heroes are from movies. Movies that are based on fictional situations with dozens of screenwriters writing the perfect words for them to say. You completely me. No, you don't complete me. That's not what this thing's for. Guys, that's not true and not real. Our examples of beauty come from people who have $25 million of surgery on them, that are filled with Botox, and yet they take a picture. Look, no makeup. Yeah, you got $25 million of surgeries. Your no makeup doesn't count in this moment. Guys, we're taught this fake realness. And even the people that claim to be real, comedians, oh, they're so funny. Yet most comedians struggle with depression. Why? Because they're living two different lives. They're living the funny life up there and the depressing life behind closed doors. There's people that pretend to be real on social media, this fake real. They take a picture. Look, no filter. I've been sleeping in all morning. Like, yeah, you spent 25 minutes setting up that whole scene to sleep in this morning. Guys, reality trumps fakeness all the time. And one of the best stories I've heard to kind of illustrate this is this facade that we'll put on is the story of the Queen Mary. Now, not the Queen Mary, but the ship, the Queen Mary. The ship, the Queen Mary, it served in the British Navy for 40 years. Went through one of the world wars. And when it was time for her to be decommissioned, this is the largest ship at that time to ever cross over the ocean. When it was time for her to be decommissioned, what they decided was this private group from California was going to bring it in, create a hotel out of it, create a museum out of it. And so they kind of parked it there in the California Bay and said, you know what, we're going to start revitalizing this thing back to its former glory. And they needed to start, there were 3 smokestacks on the top of it. And so they decided, listen, we're going to pull those smokestacks off, we're going to strip them down to their bare metal, and we're going to paint them back like they used to be. And as they began to peel back layer after layer after layer, they got to the core, and you know what they found? Nothing. The 3 smokestacks were literally just 30 layers of paint. All the metal had corroded away. And guys, we got to be careful that if we live in such a fashion that we show up to youth, we show up to life group, or we show up with someone else and we put on another layer of paint that day. And the next time we're together, we put on another layer of what it's supposed to look like. And then we put on another layer of what it's supposed to look like. What's going to happen underneath is who we really are is just going to corrode away and fall away. And there'll be nothing left but the facade. Guys, that is not authentic Christianity. And that is not what God calls us to do. You may be going, listen, Brandon, I'm at a place, I don't even know who I am anymore. You know what? Welcome. We'd love to help you find out who you are. Because you know what? We went on the same journey. We walked through that same place ourselves. Many of us in worse places than you are right now. But yet the Lord walked us out of this and showed us the freedom that there is in finding authenticity. You have to be honest with where you are. I read a story, it was a blog post. It was years ago, and it stuck with me ever since I saw it. And it was a guy who was riding his bike. He's a mountain biker out in the desert. And he missed his turn, and he wound up in a patch of cactus. You can throw that up there. And he... Yeah, that's a rough day. I mean, he started off riding a mountain bike. That's rough in itself, right? And then he wound up in there. And what happens so many times in church, in life group, is people show up like this spiritually. Amen. How are you? I'm fine. No, you're not. Yeah, no, I'm good. Listen, I'm fine. And guys, if you live that way, you never get the benefit of getting healed of those things. You just carry them with you and pretend that they're not there. Christian authenticity, it means owning where you are now while growing into who God created you to be. It's saying, listen, I'm in this place right now, but honesty in itself should invite formation into your life. That I should be honest about where I'm at so that I can become who God has called me to be. And God can't transform the version of you that you pretend to be. He's not interested in transforming that version. That version doesn't exist. And if you're always just putting up that version, He can't change you. But if you're honest about where you're at and you drop that version, then He can get to work and begin to transform you to be more like Christ. We'll see this in 1 Peter 1, verse 7. 1 Peter 1, 7 says this. It says, these have come. It's talking about all the different trials in our lives, the different things we deal with in our lives. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. This is what it's saying. It says, listen, that when your faith is tested, it's your genuine faith that matters in that moment. Not your pretended faith, that when I go through things and I'm struggling and I'm having a hard time and I'm struggling to believe God, simply my confession of God, I believe you, but help my unbelief in this area allows God to take that belief and refine it to be like gold in your life. Why? Because that's my genuine faith. It's the proven genuineness of your faith. But when I just heap full of all these Christian terms and these Christian words, praise God, hallelujah, and I've got faith and I've got faith to spare and I'm doing great, brother, God cannot refine what's going on in your life because you're covering up the very thing He wants to refine. He can only refine that which you expose to the light. And to be genuinely authentic means I say, you know what? I'm struggling right now. And God goes, yes, that's the very thing I'm looking for. And He already knows it's there. So don't hide it, but expose that and let God work on that in your life. It's authenticity, guys. There's so many people, deconstruction's kind of the buzzword right now, right? Deconstructing my faith. I'm deconstructing my faith. Well, here's the thing. To genuinely deconstruct things in your faith, I honestly do not have a major problem with. Because there are things that have happened in your faith that are not of God. And so you need to be able to take those things and go, you know what? This is not of God, that's of man. I'm going to take it off of my life. That's not real. This is not of God, that's of man. I'm going to take that off my life. But you should get down to genuine faith in the process. Deconstruction, as it's used today, is talking about, I'm just going to walk away from God. Well, then you're a lazy person. You need to get down to who God is and find the reality of who He really is so that your genuine faith can come to light, so that God can build that in your life. And what this verse says is that when that happens, Jesus Christ begins to be revealed in your life. It's your genuine faith. It's not you mixing your feelings with your faith. Come on, your feelings mean squat as far as what is true and what is untrue. There's kind of this buzz of authenticity. I'm just going to be my true self. I'm just going to be who I really am. And it's just a cover up to live however you want to live instead of living the way that God says we should live. If I'm just being myself and I'm just living who I am, that is not holy if myself doesn't recognize God's truth in the process. Listen, when I was a kid, I believed I was a dinosaur. Deep in my soul, I believed I was a dinosaur. And I am grateful my parents didn't go, you know what? Maybe you are. You should explore your dinosaur feelings. You should pursue the dinosaur deep inside of you. No, when it was 4, it was funny. But as I grew up, I needed to become the human that I am, made in the image of God. And guys, that's what authenticity allows us to do. It says, listen, I recognize this, but I'm not going to let all of this other stuff influence it anymore. If I live that way, if my journey to self-discovery is me authentically being me and just putting everything I feel out there, if I let that form who I am, I'm making a cake and I'm pulling some ingredients from the trash in the process. And I'm saying, you know, man, it may taste good, but let me tell you, you're going to get sick in the end because you're ingesting things that are just not true. Authenticity allows you to find out what is true. So we have to have personal sincerity. That's point number one. Second point, shorter point, we must have genuine relationships. We must have genuine relationships. Authenticity allows us to build real relationships based upon who we really are. And guys, those are good friendships. Those are good relationships. Not relationships based upon I have to act a certain way for us to continue to be friends. Friendships like Mike that I can get together with and I can just be bluntly honest with him. Look, Mike, this is where I'm at right now. And Mike's going to love me enough that he's going to sit there with me for a while and let me get all of that festering stuff out of my life and then just go, you know what? I hear you. I understand where you're at. But what does God say? It's that authenticity that allows us in our lives. And we'll see this idea of authenticity all through Scripture. We're going to look at 3 different scriptures when they're talking about the church and how the church should respond to each other. And every single one covers this. We'll see it here in 1 Timothy 1, verse 5. Paul's writing to Timothy on how the church should be. And he says, the aim of our charge, the whole reason we're doing this is love that issues from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. He tells them 3 times in 3 different ways. Look, this has got to come from a pure heart. It's got to be legitimate and honest. It's got to come from a good conscience. There can't be any break in your conscience and what's reality in your life. And it must come out of what is your real faith. This is important that you have this in your life. We see it in 1 Peter 1, verse 22. It says, love one another earnestly from where? From a pure heart. Isn't it good to have people love you who love you because they want to love you? That's genuine. Why? They found acceptance in what God was doing through the family of God, and they said, you know what? Hey, come join us. We want you to be a part of what's going on. I found it. I want you to find this too. See it in Romans chapter 12. I kind of picked parts of verses 9 through 18. It's a great passage, but read the whole thing later. I encourage you. But it says this. It says, love must be sincere. It must be sincere. Well, how does it look when it's sincere? Well, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. What is honor? Honor is placing value on other people based upon how you see them. And if we're going to love people, we need to value them the way that God sees them. We need to honor them above yourselves. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And that last verse, I hear a lot of people go, well, it's possible with me. I just got to be at peace with everybody. I need to have peace with everybody. Listen, what that is talking about, as much as it's in you, you need to come to peace with everybody. That you need to be connected and built and solidly at peace with the family of God. And you can only do that if love is sincere. And this word sincere, the Greek word sincere, it's a picture word. And it means to have no wax. And that may sound weird to us, but what would happen in those days is they would take clay pots, right? They didn't have the nice metal pans we have, right? They would take these clay pots, these clay jugs, and they would form them and they would put them in the fire. And as they would put them in the fire, some of them would crack in the process. And that became a useless pot. It wasn't useless actually for cooking. It was okay to put on your mantle and put a flower in, but it was not okay to put in the fire and cook in. And so what they would do is they began to become very artistic, very, very clear. They would take and they would put wax around that crack and they would draw, and it would get to the point, they got so good at this, you could not tell a pot that had wax or one that was without wax. The one that was with wax was dangerous to buy if you were looking to cook in it. Why? Because if I took that pot and I can't believe I found this deal in the marketplace today. And it seems like it's impossible, but I got this great deal. So I took it home and I put it on the fire and I put the soup in it and I lit the fire. What would happen? As soon as it heated up, that wax would drip right off of that pot, the crack would be exposed, and everything that's in that pot would begin to leak out. It was with wax. It was not sincere. And so the Romans saw this going on just around different areas, and so they made a law, and the law stated this: you must declare which pots are sincere, which ones are without wax. And guys, if we're not careful, if we live in a way that we have this wax that we've put on our relationship, this pretending we've put on it, when the fire comes, when we go through problems together, what's going to happen? Our relationship's going to suffer. Why? Because we pretended that everything was okay when in reality it wasn't. We must be people that live sincerely and love sincerely. No fakeness between us. And one of the things we have to do if we're going to live this way is we need to understand that loving each other genuinely does not mean simply being tolerant of things that are in people's lives. It means that if I love someone sincerely, that means I don't turn a blind eye to their sin. It means I turn a loving heart toward them, that I care for them. That I love them, that I see what's going on, but you know what? I love you enough to call you into a place to where you can get healing in that spot. And I've had some incredible people in my life that have done this for me. So some men that'll look at me and say, Brandon, listen, I know you believe that's right, but you're wrong. Listen, I went bragging to somebody when I was pretty new to the church. I'd just formed some friends. I'd been in a situation, having a rough time with somebody, and I just went to my friends, like, you know what I did? Man, I went and I told them off. They said, yeah, how'd that work for you? Come on, that's not how you should live as a godly man. And they called me up into a new place. Anybody gone through steps with Bob Paulus in this place? Bob Paulus, when you sit down with him over steps, and he's trained all of our steps leaders in this, is listen, when you do steps, you're going to go home every week and you're going to have homework. If you do not do your homework, don't even bother showing up at my house next week. Does he do that to be mean? No, he does it because he loves you. Why? Because you will not get out of steps to freedom what you need to get out of steps to freedom if you don't put the work into it. So quit wasting your own time by pretending and putting a facade up, and do what God has called you to do. Become all that God has for you. I remember sitting down with Pastor Jim. Pastor Jim was really good at this. Dana and I were having, we're in ministry, so we just had little marriage problems, no big marriage problems, right? But this is one of those little marriage problems that lasted for 3 days, right? And so we were fighting. We finally called in them as our referees. Sometimes you got to have referees to help you hear each other, right? And so we sat down and began to share about what was going on in our life, and it began to get a little bit more heated, and maybe my voice raised just a lot. And he said, Brandon, don't you ever talk to your wife that way again. And I thought, come on, old man, I'll take you all back right now. I know you're from Kentucky, but I know a thing or two. I can take you. But you know what? He loved me. He cared for me, and he called me into a new place. And I'm so grateful for people like that in my life. Because the reality is, here at Grace, we don't just want people to feel better about their lives. We want them to get better. It's like when you have a splinter. Anybody have a splinter that's so deep-seated you had to call somebody else to help you with it? Man, that's painful. But you know what? Pain is part of the process of healing. It's what's needed for you to heal. You can live with the disease and the pain for the rest of your life, or in a moment someone can love you enough to say, dude, you're covered with cactus. Let me help you. And this is really going to stink for the next 30 minutes. But the healing that's coming as a result will change the rest of your life. Authenticity is being honest about where you are right now and striving to become the best version of who God created you to be. And authentic relationships are the vehicle that get us there. And only authentic people can create authentic community. God's calling us all up into authenticity. So how do we get there? Well, the best way I can describe it, A.W. Tozer did a much better job than I. Know that's hard to imagine, but he did. In the pursuit of God. This is what he says, and I'm going to finish with this quote. He says, has it ever occurred to you that 100 pianos all tuned to the same fork are automatically tuned to each other? They are of one accord by being tuned not to each other, but to another standard to which one must individually bow. So 100 worshipers meeting together, each one looking away to Christ, are in heart nearer to each other than they could possibly be, where they become unity conscious and turn their eyes away from God to strive to be close for closer fellowship. This is what he's saying. Listen, guys, the goal is not for us all to conform to the grace way. I just want to be like everybody else at Grace. No, please, no. I got to get through steps, and I got to get through discipleship, I got to get through this, I got to get through this, so that I can just be, no, 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 no. The goal is for us all to be conformed to be more like Christ, to reflect who he is, and when we do that, we'll be more like each other than we've ever been before. That's what it says in 1 John. It says that when we walk in the light as he is in the light, then we have fellowship with one another. Come on, don't get so mixed up that's like I got to go through the process and I got to do all these things. No, please be honest about where you're at and become more like Christ every day. Then we'll become more and more like each other. Be like Nathaniel. Someone that's willing to say, I don't know if I agree, but is also willing to meet with Jesus and let him change his mind.